Sir, good morning.
Good morning, Ishwardi.
Yes. Very good morning to everyone. So it's my privilege to introduce the renowned Professor Dr. Sudarshan Rao H from JNTU Anantapur. So he is a dynamic professor and inspirational professor across civil engineering student fraternity and faculty and faculty members. So he completed his PhD from IIT Bombay. So then he has around 35 years of teaching and industry experience. And he held positions both academic and administrative in JNTU Hyderabad as well as JNTU Anantapur. So he is a dynamic and good researcher in the fields of especially artificial intelligence, like artificial neural networks, fuzzy systems, and genetic algorithm applications in civil engineering. So low cost housing materials and techniques. He has, to his credit, around 160 research articles and papers in refereed national and international journals and conferences. He has, to his credit, he is a reviewer of various international journals. So then he developed a software called CERMCON, a FEM software for the analysis of cement matrix composites, and ANNS, Artificial Neural Network Simulator. So he is member of different professional societies. So he is a well-known structural engineer. So in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. He is a renowned academician. So he worked as former rector of JNTU Anantapur and former director of IIIT Idukulupaya. So recently he resumed again JNTU Anantapur professor and director industrial consultancy services. So I welcome Professor Sudarshan Rao sir, so to take up the session. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, now you can share your PPTs.
You have disabled the sharing. Enable the
1
sharing.
minute. Oh. 1 minute, sir. I will make you co-host. Yes, I made you co-host. No issue.
This is fine, Ishwardi.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Shall I start?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
So, thank you, Professor Ishwardi, for your nice introduction. Good morning, all the participants. I am Professor Sudarshan Rao from Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University, Anantapur. At the outset, let me appreciate the efforts taken by the Civil Engineering Department of Sri Vidyaniketan Engineering College, Tirupati, which is a very renowned engineering college in the state of Andhra Pradesh and is also one of the very good college in the family of JNTU. So in this particular critical time, they have taken up this FDP and particularly appreciate the efforts of Dr. Ishwar Reddy and Yuvraj and all other faculty members of Civil Engineering Department. So actually, I was listening to the morning talk from Dr. Kalagal. We are also good friends, myself and Dr. Kalagal in Ultratech. So he actually made my life very easy when I want to present this particular topic. So when actually Professor Ishwar Reddy contacted me about a topic in this particular FDP program, I was wondering to which topic I should choose. Because in repair and rehabilitation, if you think, I have done a lot of work. Many of my students have also worked in this area, and we have good number of publications in this area. The interest actually generated when I was doing my doctoral work at IIT Bombay under the guidance of my professor Abhijit Mukherjee, who is presently in Australia now. So Bhuj earthquake was just happened, and the government has taken up the rehabilitation works there. So that time my supervisor got a very good project in the rehabilitation. So I was assisting him, and that's how I developed interest in this area. So, you know, when I wanted to discuss something about the repair and rehabilitation, I chose to discuss this underwater repair of the concrete, because it's a very challenging task to repair something underwater. In the morning session, Professor Dr. Kalgal has explained to you about the various methodologies for identifying the distress and tackling it in the concrete. But when the concrete structural element is underwater, it is totally a different scenario. Although the repair materials or the methodologies may be same, but how you execute the repair underwater, how you identify the problem underwater, and how you monitor the repair, these things really pose a big challenge when it comes to underwater repair. So that's why I thought I would discuss this particular topic to benefit many listeners who are interested in knowing about how underwater repairs of the concrete take place. It's definitely a challenging task to do repair underwater. So my agenda for today's presentation, a brief introduction, then causes of deterioration. I'll also be discussing about the evaluations and investigation. So how to evaluate the structure and what type of investigations you have to carry out. A few things are already described by Professor Kalgal. And also we'll be discussing about the methods of underwater repair of concrete structures and how to prepare for the repair underwater, and what are the steps involved in underwater repair of the concrete. And for this, what type of formworks are available, and what methods and materials are useful for underwater repair of concrete. Then once the repair is done, how to conduct an inspection of the repair, and what are the future developing technologies for underwater repair of concrete. And this is a brief agenda which I will be covering in the next 1 hour. So let us first start with the introduction about this topic. And most of the listeners may wonder why I have to take up a repair underwater. Why not we dewater the entire thing and then repair the structure? But dewatering the entire area and taking up a repair and making it dry and then taking a repair is practically impossible in many conditions. Probably if you are in a small water body, if you want to do the repair, then dewatering may be possible. But if you think of a big river, or if you think of a seashore, structures under sea, so it will be practically impossible to make dewatering and make dry condition there. And this definitely disrupts the project operations and also very expensive. Dewatering is very expensive. So that's why we don't have any other alternative but to repair the structure underwater. So the repair of concrete underwater is really a complex problem. It's a very complex phenomena. Even though, as I said earlier, the repair procedures and materials are very similar to those required in a normal concrete repair. But what is important is how you execute the repair underwater, how to plan the repair, how to identify the problem, and then how to repair the structure. So this poses a really big challenge when it is underwater. Because as you expect harsh environmental conditions and problems associated with working underwater in the splash zone particularly, they cause many difficulties. You need specialized products, you need specialized systems, and you also have to use services of highly qualified and experienced professionals when you want to undertake underwater repair. Before that, actually, you have to make a proper evaluation of the present condition of the structure. That will be the first step for designing a long-term repair. When you think of a repair underwater, your repair must be a long-term repair, because it's very difficult to conduct the repair underwater. It should not be frequent repairs. Once a repair is done, it should last for a long time. So that's why we have to design a long-term repair. So in order to make the repair to be most effective and it lasts long, proper evaluation is needed. So for proper evaluation, we may need to collect historical information of the structure from the people who were involved in the construction, or by going back to the drawings and designs of the structure at the time of execution. And you have to take the periodic on-site inspection reports which are available. All this we have to do before we actually plan a repair underwater. You have to investigate and prepare a comprehensive documentation of the cause and extent of the deterioration that has actually taken place. You have to come out with a proper repair technique and a quality assurance scheme and installation procedures that have to be taken care in resulting a better repair system underwater. So the whole idea is longevity of the repair. The whole idea is the longevity of the repair. That is the ultimate indicator of the success. So as I said earlier, longevity of the repair is very important. When it is underwater, you should not resort to frequent repairs, as you will see how difficult to tackle underwater repair. Particularly, water contains oxygen and certain contaminants that can cause aggressive attack on the concrete. Underwater repair of the concrete is a very specialized and highly technical part of a concrete repair technology. That's why I said I would like to discuss this topic today. You have to select appropriate repair materials and methods and measures of quality control, which are not normally associated with above water repairs. You need a sound engineering, good quality workmanship, and high performance products for repair and systems, which are extremely important when you plan an underwater repair. So you need to consider all these factors, and then only you will come up with a good successful repair underwater. So before actually proceeding to the repair, let us discuss briefly about what are the environmental conditions that affect the deterioration. So water temperature, the oxygen content, water pH value, salinity, sulfates, all these cause deterioration of the structures underwater. So as water temperature is a very important parameter. If the temperature rises, it accelerates the chemical reactions and corrosion. So the rates of corrosion will increase when the temperature of the water is more. Similarly, oxygen content, if you take, increased oxygen content creates corrosion. The wave action, turbulence, and water flow rate bring oxygen to the submerged elements. All these are the factors that are involved in deteriorating the structure. The pH value of the water is very important. If the waters are acidic, that is having a very low pH value, they accelerate the corrosion of the steel reinforcement, or if you are using steel structure under the water. Similarly, salinity, the chlorides from the salt, they facilitate the corrosion. Seawater is having about 3.5% of the salt content, and corrosion rates are generally observed to be very high when the salt contents are around 1%. So if the salt content is about 3.5%, you can imagine how much the rate of corrosion will take place under seawater. Similarly, sulfates are also another very important phenomena which will assist the deterioration under water. So when you plan a repair underwater, you need to do evaluation, then you have to do the repair, and then you have to inspect the repair. All three things are important. Preliminary investigation, that is evaluations, inspections and evaluation. Then the second thing is carrying out the repair. Then the third thing is inspection of the repair. So generally when you work under above water, Once the repair is done, we forget about the repair. We will not inspect the repair generally. But whereas underwater, once the repair is completed, inspection of the repair is also very important. So these 3 steps you have to take when it comes to underwater concrete repair. So here, for all these steps, to take out all these 3 steps, diving technology is used in underwater. So what is this diving technology? And what are the different types of the diving technologies? Basically, we have 3 types of diving technologies that are used for underwater repair. The first one is the manned diving. The manned diving, where a person will wear an armored suit which is capable of resisting 1 atmosphere pressure. 1 atmosphere pressure. So the suit which is capable of resisting 1 atmosphere pressure, the person will wear and he will dive into the water. This is the most simple or commonly used method, manned diving. The second method is manned submarine. So in this case, the person will enter underwater through a submarine. He will be using a submarine to go into the water. So this is the second one. So in both cases, whether it's a manned diving or manned submarine, persons are going underwater. Whereas the third method is remotely operated vehicle, ROV. So in this case, no person will be entering the water. A ROV vehicle will be sent underwater and the human beings stay on a badge constructed above water, and from there they monitor the operation of the remotely operated vehicle, ROV. So these are the 3 proper technologies which are used in diving. So if you take manned diving, see here you can see a person is below water, he is entering below water, and this is the suit which he has taken. He has weared a suit which is capable of resisting 1 atmospheric pressure, and this is all his breathing apparatus. It is all breathing apparatus, so through oxygen breathing takes place. So this is the traditional method. The manned diving is the traditional method for performing underwater repairs or any task in fact underwater. The diver, whoever is entering the water, he is equipped with a life support system that provides breathable air and protection from the elements underwater. So you popularly heard about scuba diving. If you have visited Andaman or Nicobar Islands or Goa, there you would have done the scuba diving. What is scuba? Scuba is self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. So a person wears the scuba, the self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, and then he wears the armored suit which will resist 1 atmospheric pressure, and he will dive into the water. He will go under the water. So this is popularly used technology, scuba. So when you need to perform duties at pressures more than 1 atmosphere ambient pressure, then that causes physiological changes within the human body. The diver, whoever the diver is there, it will create physiological changes within his body. So the body tissues absorb and shed gases at different rates than those normally experienced on the surface when which you are underwater. So this depends upon how deep you are into the water, and that directly relates to what is the pressure of water under. So if you are going deep and deeper into the water, the pressure goes on increases, and if the pressure is up to 1 atmosphere, then you are in the safe zone. So if the pressure goes on increases, the time available for the repair underwater decreases gradually. So generally, the industry standards are allowing a diver to use compressed air at 30 feet, that is about 10 meters for unlimited period of time. So if you are with a depth of 10 meters, within a depth of 10 meters, then you can work for unlimited period of time. If the depth is increased to 20 meters, the diver can work only for 60 minutes, that is 1 hour, without taking any special precautions. The upper limit is 30 minutes work if you are going beyond 30 meters. If you are going beyond 30 meters in seawater, the diver can work for only 30 minutes. So if these limits are exceeded, then you need to take precautions to decompress the diver, because decompression takes place with the diver as he goes deeper and deeper. So you have to take precautions to decompress the diver. So the sophistication and hence the money involved, the cost involved in the diving systems used on the project increases the depth at which you are working. So if you are working at greater depths, you need highly sophisticated systems. So if manned diving used at depths greater than 60 meters of sea level, then most divers use specially formulated mixtures of gases rather than compressed air. So generally when you are below 60 meters, you use compressed air. But if you are going even deeper than 60 meters, then the simple compressed air is not going to help. So many divers, they use a mixture of gases rather than simply a compressed air. The technologies that are associated with this mixed gas diving, they are changing rapidly, and more new technologies are coming to facilitate the divers to go and work at greater depths. So if you come to ROV, as I said, the second method, submarine, I could not get a peak, but this ROV, I could get a peak here. So this is a remotely operated vehicle in which the persons or the people who are investigating the structure, they stay on a barge constructed up above the water, and this ROV is sent into the water to the required depth. So this really avoids many problems that are involved with human decompression when a human diver is going into the water. So when you are really working at very high depths under the sea, then this is very much required. ROV is very much required and is used. But definitely it increases the project cost. So you have to understand the typical repair zones that are there underwater. So basically, if you see this figure, you will understand that there are three repair zones. One is a submerged zone, which is totally inside. Then the tidal zone, so where the tidal areas are experienced, and the splash zone. So the splash zone or the open area, these all put together is called exposed zone. So splash zone plus open zone, we call it as exposed zone. So basically we have three repair zones when you come underwater. One is a submerged zone, and the second one is a tidal zone, and the third one is the exposed zone. So all these three areas, repair may become necessary depending upon the type of deterioration. So as I said, you have to understand what is the cause of deterioration before you take up the repair. So if you look at, I have listed various causes, marine organisms that are present in the seawater, and deficient construction practices, that is when the original structure was constructed, there may be a deficiency of construction practice, or there may be errors taking place, or there may be design errors, or there may be mixed design errors, there may be so many other reasons which would have caused the deterioration. As already I explained you, chemical attack, corrosion, all mechanical damage, all this can take place on structures underwater. Another important damage that takes place in freezing and thawing damage. So in structures located underwater in very cool zones, there is a possibility that the water freezes, and then when the temperature increases again, it becomes thawing. So there is freezing as well as thawing. So this will create a continuous cycle of freezing thawing, will create damage to the structure. And of course, if you are in a marine condition, so out of all this, if you look at either concrete structures reinforced with steel or steel structures built with the pure steel elements, the deterioration, the important deterioration causes the corrosion. So if you look at this particular diagram, you can see the submerged zone. In the submerged zone, the maximum corrosion is taking place, whether when you compare to the splash zone or exposed zone. So you have to be very careful with particular corrosion when you are in submerged zone. As in the morning, Mr. Kalgal was also pointing about this corrosion. He was also talking about this very corrosion. So if there is a small crack that has developed in the concrete during the initial construction, and that is sufficient for the saline water to enter into the structure and damage the reinforcing bars that are there in the structure. So the corrosion rates are increasing with the age of the structure also. So you have to keep these points in mind when you think of a repair underwater. So as I said, before you plan a repair, evaluation and investigations are necessary before you proceed with the repair underwater. So what are the evaluations and investigations which you need to take underwater? So generally, if you are working above water, Professor Kalgal was telling about a visual inspection or taking a chisel and then taking out some sample, chiseling there with a chisel and hammer. So he was telling some of the very small evaluation procedures. But when you come to underwater, going there and chiseling or taking out a material, you need a different technology. So structural investigations underwater are usually conducted as part of routine preventive maintenance programs. So you have to do a preventive maintenance program to avoid deterioration to the structure. And during the initial construction inspection also, you have to conduct the evaluation. And as a special examination, when an accident takes place or a catastrophic event takes place, or when you want to plan a repair, you have to do this evaluation and investigations. So whenever you want to plan a repair, then the first step is going to be evaluation and investigation when it is underwater. Underwater inspections are usually, they are hampered by the adverse conditions, if they are such as the poor visibility below the water and the strong currents of water, then the type of temperature that is existing in the water. And also you can have different types of marine growth which can harm the person who is going there into the water. And sometimes you will see huge debris build up also. All these conditions will try to hamper the underwater inspection or evaluation. So there is a need to have a good horizontal and vertical control for accurately locating your observation. So that is very difficult when it comes to underwater. Above water, you can easily locate the damage area very specifically, but which is very difficult when it comes to underwater. So you have to, the diver has to carry the life support systems which are very having certain weight, and then he has to also carry the equipment required for doing the evaluation and the investigation. So all this the diver has to take along with him. So that's why the underwater inspections usually take much longer time to accomplish than for the similar structures if they are located above the water. So this the primary goal in all these investigations is to inspect the structural elements to detect any obvious damage that has taken place. If the defect is observed, then the inspector identifies the type and extent of the defect to determine how serious the problem may be. If the problem is, if the defect is very small, then sometimes you can wait for the defect to become more, or if you observe that the defect is not going to create any further damage, then you can forget about the defect. So no repair need to be planned. Or if necessary, an inspection team can also reinvestigate the particular damaged area. But unfortunately, what happens is the divers who are going into the water, they are not structural engineers, and they don't have much knowledge about the structural engineering problems that the concrete is experiencing, the deterioration problems. So the divers, whatever evaluation the divers are giving, interpretation of this evaluation by structural engineers at the surface is very, very important, and you have to do proper evaluation of the information that is provided by the diver from the bottom of the water, underwater. So here I am showing a figure which depicts the effect of maintenance. You can see with the structural age, how if you do a proper maintenance, if you can do a proper maintenance, how it is going to save the structure. So you can very clearly see that with the maintenance cycles you are using at regular intervals, then the required performance level is increasing. The required structural performance is increasing. You can see it very clearly. So when it comes to underwater, that is why the advice is prevention. Prevention is better than cure. So when it becomes underwater, it is very, very important. You have to stress more on that, because the proper maintenance of underwater structures will reduce the need of repair, and the structural performance will be more. So then, how to plan the investigation underwater? Once you decide about the scope of the investigation, then you have to plan about the mission of conducting this inspection underwater. So generally, they conduct a pre-inspection meeting to identify what type of equipment they have to use underwater and what type of techniques they have to use. And in addition, what type of documentation you have to do. Whatever evaluations you are doing, the documentation is very important. So the information that is sent from the below water about surface, that has to be documented properly for further analysis. So inspection notes typically they consist of a diving log with the notification of specific features, and these are generally transcribed from a slate which is used by a diver. The diver is using a slate, and so or a worksheet. It finds a form of a worksheet. The information passed on by the diver to the surface will be, the worksheet will be filled up by people who are sitting above the surface. If necessary, these are to be supplemented with the proper sketches and photographs and also videotapes. The diver can take a video equipment, a specialized video equipment which will be used underwater, a specialized camera to take up the photographs underwater. So those to be passed on to proper documentation by structural engineers who are staying above the surface. So as I said, evaluation of the findings is very important. This is another very important topic when it comes to underwater. So whatever information that is passed on from the diver, so these are to be evaluated by people who are staying at the surface. So this is a very difficult task. What is the idea of the diver? You have to properly understand whatever documentation he has sent and evaluate to find out the effect or to find out the exact damage that has taken place. So here, the skill of the diver or an inspector is very much essential for the evaluation process to be really a meaningful one. So generally, it is the responsibility of the diver to qualify and quantify the condition of the defect, because he is the person who has gone inside. He has to quantify the amount of the defect that has taken place underwater. So the evaluator also has to judge whether the defect will continue to degrade the structure or if the problem has stabilized. So it's very important, because this can avoid the complete repair program. Complete repair program can be avoided if you decide that the problem has already stabilized and there is no need of a repair. So these things actually the evaluators have to do staying at the water. So this is a typical monitoring system for manned diving. You can see this is a diver here, and this is the diving shield which is protecting the diver not going into this zone. So here, this is a barge constructed above water. So this is a barge constructed above water. Here you have the computer or receiving system, which are connected by cables here. So from here, whatever the information that is sent by the diver will be brought above the barge into this recording system. So this is a typical monitoring system used in manned diving. So here you can see the inspection being carried out by a diver. So here you can see a diver has gone underwater with the scuba system and the armored suit. So he is able to reach and he is inspecting the structure. So the pictures you can't get very clarity in underwater. So that's why you can't get very good quality pictures. The clarity is definitely to be compromised. Once the evaluations are done, once the effect is the underwater inspection is carried out, then once evaluations are to be done, then you have to decide about what actions to be taken care. So which is the appropriate action to take after a defect has been identified. So this involves the potential hazard of the defect. First thing, whether the defect has got any potential hazard on the structure. Then the second thing is the risk of continued structural deterioration. Is there that risk of continued structural deterioration because of this particular defect, which is identified by a diver? and you have to decide what technology is available to repair this particular defect, and also think about what's the cost associated to take up that repair. And you also estimate what is the remaining life of the structure. If the remaining life of the structure is very small, then there is no meaning in planning a repair and trying to spend money on that. So if the life of the structure is very much more, the life of the structure remained is very much more, then you have to definitely plan for the repair. But if the defect presents a hazard that threatens the complete life safety of the individuals working there in the nearby, or it can continue the operation of the facility, then remedial action should be taken immediately. If the remedial action needs to be taken up immediately, when the defect can cause a life damage, or it can cause a complete discontinuity of the purpose for which the structure is constructed. So in both these cases, a repair is to be immediately taken up. So the morning also, to locate the distress, Professor Kalgal was speaking about the visual inspection. Visual inspection, so eyesight. So in above water structures, generally a professional, a structural engineer and an expert will visit the structure and visually inspect the structure with the help of a small chisel or a small hammer and small photographs or videographs. He will be trying to do visual inspections. But when it comes to underwater inspection, visual inspections, very, very difficult because the visibility is very poor. Visibility is very poor, and you have to carry a wide variety of hand tools. You need to carry a wide variety of hand tools if you need to go underwater. They have to be specially prepared for that purpose. So you can have to measure the defect. The physical measurements of the defect are to be taken by visual scaling. You have to do by visual scaling, or generally hand rulers. So by thumbs or by using fingers, we have to use hand rulings or hand spans, body lengths, all this depth gauge. Sometimes the depth gauges, thickness gauges are also used in visual inspections. So visual inspections provide the key information for writing the report on the type of the damage that has taken place. So sometimes videotape documentation, photographic documentation is also possible in visual inspection. So the difficulty here is the scuba mouthpiece, which is used by the diver, does not allow the diver to speak. So with the scuba equipment with to his mouth, the diver can't speak. So he has to indicate through symbols. He has to indicate through symbols only the type of operation that he is taking care there underwater. So that is one difficulty which we face in underwater diving. So the visual inspection with the help of wireless systems will be better, but unfortunately, most of the times the wireless systems don't work at all, don't work well when it is underwater. So here, a typical world-class remote operated vehicle, so which is used to carry out the visual inspection by people sitting at the top on a badge. The structural engineers or people sit on the barge over the surface of the water and set the ROV. So with the help of the arms, these robotic arms, video cameras and ordinary cameras and gauges can be used by ROV vehicle underwater. So with this we get proper documentation for visual inspection. So the second type of inspection is a tactile inspection. So tactile inspections means by touching with hand. Tactile inspection means by touching the structure with hand. So this is again very difficult when it comes to underwater. So tactile inspections are perhaps the most difficult underwater surface. Tactile inspection above water is very easy, but it's not so when it goes underwater. So usually conductor and conditions of extremely poor visibility. If you can't conduct a visual inspection because of the poor visibility, then we have to go for a tactile inspection underwater. So generally the examples are a settling pond or a very heavily silted river or this type of things. Then there is no visibility below water. So in such a cases, you have to use tactile inspection. So when you want to use tactile inspection, you have to have proper diving system on hand to go and reach the structure safely. And once you find out a defect there by your tactile inspection, then you should be able to describe the same to the structural engineers who are sitting on the top and able to give the correct idea of the defection. So here you can see the divers are going for tactile inspection using some hand wrenches there. So trying to inspect a structure by tactile inspection. So this is a typical view of damage that can take place underwater. So you can see here the type of damage that is taking place. So in the morning, the Kalgal sub was speaking about the non-destructive testing. So the similar type of non-destructive testing is to be carried out even underwater also to find out the type of the capacity of the structure, the structural capacity of the structure in underwater also. So there are different types of non-destructive testing systems when it comes to underwater. Generally, we use a we use a hammer test or use a ultraviolet pulse velocity test when it comes to above water. So similarly, we have sounding equipments, ultrasonic pulse velocity equipment, which is slightly different from what we use above water levels, above surface. Then we have magnetic reinforcing bar locators, so to see how many reinforcement bars are there in the structure. So this magnetic mapping, they take place and they can find out how many bars are there and what is the spacing of the bars. This can be determined with magnetic reinforcing bar locator. Similarly, impact hammer, which works with the principle of giving an impact on the structure. So echo sounders, which send the frequency to the structure. Echo sounds send a sound wave frequency to the structure and receive the sound wave coming back from the structure. So with the frequency analysis, the type and the amount of damage that has taken place in the structure can be identified with the echo sounders. So these are there are also sonar systems, then radars and acoustic profilers, all available for non-destructive testing of concrete when it comes to underwaters. Of course, I'm not going to discuss more about all these equipment. So I just want to tell you there are equipments available, non-destructive equipments available even for underwater testing. So this is a typical echo sounder here. So this is a typical echo sounder here. Here is passing on the sound wave frequency to the structure and taking the receiving frequency from what is coming from the structure. So this is a typical thickness gauge which is used underwater to measure the thickness of the structure. So after deterioration, what is the thickness or what is the flaw thickness, all can be measured with this particular thickness gauge. So this here you can see a diver is using the thickness gauge here. See, he's using this thickness gauge to measure the thickness of the defect here underwater. So this is a typical photograph, and similarly another view of the same photograph, you can see the diver is trying to measure the thickness of the damage that is taking place. So it's very difficult really to do this operation. It really depends on the skill of the diver and his knowledge about the defect system. So that is really very important when it comes to underwater. So this is a typical ultrasonic flaw detector which works on the similar principles of ultrasonic pulse velocity. So it tries to find out the location of the flaws and the quantification of the flaw within the structure. So this is another magnetic particle inspection which works on magnetic wave system to identify the flaws and defects underwater. So this is a typical image capturing camera. This is a typical image capturing camera which is used underwater. So the diver has to carry this camera and then he has to take the photographs of the damage that has occurred in the structure. So like sampling and destructive testing can also be conducted underwater, just like what we do above water surface. So sampling can also be done. So for sampling, you have to collect cores. You have to collect the cores from the structure, and then the cores can be tested. The cores should be brought above the water and then tested in the laboratory. So when the visual or tactile inspections or non-destructive testing, if they are not able to adequately indicate the internal condition of the structure, then only we proceed to destructive testing or collecting the cores. So as far as possible, if NDT or visual inspection are providing good indication, then we need to avoid a destructive testing or sampling from the underwater. So collecting the cores is one of the very popular method for sampling even underwater also. And the type of drilling equipment you have to use is different from what we use in above water conditions. So we have to have a specialized drilling equipment to cut the core from the underwater concrete samples. So drill base plates are to be suitably bolted to the structure underwater. First, before you start drilling, you have to fix the bolt. You have to fix the base plate with the help of good bolts to the structure against which you are going to take out the core. You have to go cut the core. So a diver operated core cutting apparatus cuts cores up to almost a depth of 1.2 meters or 4 feet and diameters of about 6 inches, that is 150 mm diameter. So these type of cores are generally used. So what's important is the equipment, the core cutting equipment should be very light enough to be operated by boat from 18 feet height, from 18 feet height. So that should not be very heavy, so the boat will get submerged again. So that care you have to take. If necessary, larger cores can also be taken, and the specimens can also be tested in the laboratory. But as far as possible, try to limit your core diameters up to 6 inches so that the weight of the core drilling machine is less and can be carried easily. So pneumatic or hydraulic saws and chipping hammers are also available to take out the samples in addition to core cutting. So samples of the reinforcing bar also taken out by cutting the bars with pneumatic or hydraulic saw cutters, or sometimes diamond blades are also used to cut the reinforcement. So these can also be cut and brought above the sea level and tested in the laboratory. So we sometimes high pressure water jets are also used to cut the reinforcing steel in an underwater structure. So here you can see a typical hydraulic hammer. A hydraulic hammer. This is all the platform on which the badge or the platform on which the entire equipment is rested, and this is a typical hydraulic hammer which is used to collect the core sample from underwater construction. So once you take out the cores, or once you've done the evaluation, and once you have identified the damage and the type of repair you need to be planned. So once you have decided about the type of repair you have to do, then you have to prepare for the repair. You have to prepare for the repair. You have to make the preparation for carrying out the repair underwater. So the first is the concrete removal on the surface. So first you have to remove the concrete, whatever loose concrete is there, which has damaged, deteriorated concrete is there, you have to remove that. So generally we use high pressure water jets. We use high pressure water jet or pneumatic or hydraulic powered chipping hammers or hydraulic powered saws. So if it is damaged reinforcement, then we have to cut with hydraulic powered saws. So these are the generally equipment which are used to prepare for removal of the concrete. Then we have to also do surface preparation. Once the concrete is removed, the surface to be prepared before the repair. So for that again we use high pressure water jet, or we may use abrasive blasting. We may use abrasive blasting, or mechanical scrubbers are also available. So with this you can prepare the surface. So for in case of rehabilitation of the reinforcement, so we need to remove whatever the damaged reinforcement is there, and we have to use probably diamond cuts or high powered saws, hydraulic saws we have to use to remove the damaged reinforcement. So here typically this slide I am showing you the equipment which is used for concrete removal, or the loose concrete or damaged concrete. So this is a hydraulic pump and chainsaw. This is a hydraulic pump and chainsaw which is used to remove the concrete, damaged concrete. So here another powered drill, hydraulic powered drill. You see here, hydraulic powered drill is used to remove the concrete or damaged concretes. So here you can see a chainsaw. Here, this is the chainsaw, the hydraulic chainsaw, which is used to cut the damaged steel reinforcement. So here, hydraulic powered hammer drill. You can see a diver is using. This is a diver is using a hydraulic powered drill. This is the drill to remove the loose concrete. So for surface preparation, we have high pressure water jet. You can see here a high pressure water jet is being forced on the structure to remove the. This is the pier structure. So high pressure water is forced onto the structure to remove the damaged concrete. So here it is a mechanical scrubber. So see, this you can see the scrubbing equipment. This is the brushes, scrubbing brushes. So this is a mechanical rotary scrubber, which is also used for surface preparation for underwater structures. So now if you come to steps involved in underwater repair of concrete, if you have, there are three steps. There are three steps which you have to take up in underwater repair of the concrete. In majority of the systems, we use pre-placed aggregate concrete. In majority of the systems, we use the pre-placed aggregate concrete system. So in the pre-placed aggregate concrete system, we use three steps sequence. The first step is placing the form and aggregates. The form and aggregate placement. So here you can see here, this is this complete area is the damaged area. So from all this, the loose concrete is already removed. This loose concrete is already removed with the help of proper equipment, or maybe drill or maybe water jet. We have removed all the concrete here. So now here pre-placed concrete is to be poured. So for this, we prepare a formwork here. So this is the formwork. Formwork is a supporting one. So formwork is prepared here. Then hand placed aggregate is poured. So the hand placed aggregate is poured into this area. So this is the first step. Formwork and aggregate placement is the first step. The second phase is we finish the forms and aggregate placement. So here see all the aggregates are placement is completed, and the formwork and the grouting pipes are installed here. Grouting pipes are installed here. So this is the second step. And the third step is pumping the grout through the aggregate. So this is the aggregate. So now grout is pumped through the aggregate. The cement grout is pumped through the aggregate. So this completes the repair for this damaged zone. So these are the three steps which are used in underwater concrete. So here you can see the repair of underwater structure being taken place by two divers here. This typically they are doing pressure grouting. So when we said formwork, we have two types of formworks available: a rigid and semi-rigid formworks or flexible formworks. Rigid and semi-rigid formworks or flexible formworks. Rigid and semi-rigid forms, you can see a rigid form which is built with steel bars. Rigid forms with proper stiffness are built with rigid bars, so they support the structure. But sometimes we also use flexible forms, which are fabric or thin polymer sheets. Fabric or thin polymer sheets, so which will be use and throw types. So sometimes people also prefer to use flexible forms in terms of fabric or polymer sheets, so which will reduce the cost, and also they are lightweight and ease of transporting to the structure below water. So sometimes even these flexible forms are also very much useful. So what are the various methods and materials that are available for underwater repair of concrete? So your objective is what type of design objective that really dictates the type of repair you are used in the project. So that's what you have to first identify, the design objective of the repair. So if it is a minor spall or a crack, a simple surface patch or a crack injection may be adequate. If the crack is very small, simple crack injection is sufficient for providing protection to the reinforcing steel. For major damage, where the load carrying capacity of the structural element is compromised, then the repair may be to re-establish the strength of the original element, or perhaps even to establish a new load path around the damaged area. So we have to re-establish the complete strength of the original structural element. So that depends upon the severity damage. If it's a small damage, then you go ahead with a crack injection system, or if it's a big damage, then you have to reinforce to improve the load carrying capacity of the structural system. So the severity of the damage determines what type of surface preparation you have to do, what type of forming system you have to use, and what reinforcement arrangement you have to do, and the type of repair material you have to use is dictated by the severity of the damage. So the materials which are generally available for underwater repairs are pre-placed aggregate concrete. So aggregate is placed first and then it is grouted. Then pumped concrete and grout. So this is where the concrete is pumped into the defective area. So through hydraulic pumps. Then free dump through water is another method which is used. And most popularly used are epoxy grouting and epoxy injection. So epoxy grouting and epoxy injection are the two very popularly used repair methods underwater. So very similar to what we do epoxy grouting above water. So the injection systems or grouting systems are used to inject the epoxy mix into the damaged area. So it's very similar to what you have discussed in the morning for structures which are above surface level. Only thing is you have to carry the equipment, the grouting equipment or the injection system below the water. So make them as lightweight possible or possible. So here you can see a pneumatic needle gun, which is generally used for injection process. So the epoxy is injected through this gun, into the damaged area. So sometimes a pneumatic drill is also used to inject the epoxy liquid. So this is the epoxy injection equipment. Typically, this is the figure showing a typical epoxy injection equipment, which is on the float here, is above surface level. So here you can see the injection ports and seal coat. Once the injections are made, once the epoxy injection is completed with the help of a gun, then a seal coat is provided. A seal coat is provided on the top. So this is how it appears of the seal coat. So this is the injection of resin through port. Okay, this is the injection of resin through port. So I have to hurry up. I think the time is going to be finished. So these are different possible repair methods I am suggesting here for the type of damage, what type of repair you have to use. So it's very self-explanatory. Please just have a look to the type of repair you have to adopt for the type of damage which has occurred. So here you can see pile repair using splice plates. Two splice plates are used here to repair the damaged pier, because here the damage is very high. So when the damage is very high, there is need to improve the carrying capacity of the structure. So here the splice plates are used to improve the carrying capacity. And these are the equipment for injecting the epoxy mixes or resin into the crack. So this is a typically crack injection. The epoxy is being injected here. So these are some, again, resin injection equipments. I just rushed through. These are all epoxy injection systems. So after the repair is completed, it's very important to conduct inspection of the repairs also. So it is unlike what you do, you forget about the repair in the above water conduction. It is not the case when it is below water. So when you complete a repair underwater, you have to do repair of the inspection of the repair after completing the repair also. So that is a very important task you have to take up after repair. So again, a scuba diver or a remotely operated vehicle need to be used for this purpose. So maybe the different inspection techniques which I have already discussed are to be used for post-construction inspection. So proper documentation, as already we have discussed about the complete repair, a video recording or videotape of the repair that was undertaken, and the photographs and sketches need to be kept for future guidance when you do repair underwater. So now finally, the developing technologies now we observe precast concrete elements and prefabricated steel elements that are coming up for repairs to benefit underwater repairs. So with this precast concrete elements then and prefabricated steel elements, there is nothing to do after going into the water, because if you want to inject a epoxy or you want to place a aggregate or pre-placed aggregate concrete below water, it's all you need a farm work and you have to go there and do concreting or injecting the epoxies becomes difficult. But with the help of precast concrete elements and prefabricated steel elements, this can be avoided. So the type of damage once identified and the type of element which is needed to improve the capacity, structural capacity of the damaged structure, then we can plan a precast element directly taken into the water, and then the structure can be repaired with the precast elements and precast steel elements. Ferrocement is one such area. You know, most of you know about ferrocements. I hope ferrocement is mesh layers. So mesh layers, welding meshes. You know, mesh layers with grouted cement water, grouted cement sand solution. So this is called ferrocement technology, which is also very much useful when it comes to underwater repair. So this is also coming up. Ferrocement technology is also coming up for underwater repairs. So that's about the various challenges and various methodologies when you have to think about underwater concrete repair. So I hope I made it very clear. I probably gave a very brief outline of how to tackle an underwater repair. So how difficult it is, how challenging task it is for a structural engineer to tackle an underwater concrete repair or steel element repair. So I hope you enjoyed this particular presentation. Thank you all the listeners for joining me.
Sir.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, sir. You can stop sharing, sir.
Is it fine?
No, sir, not yet.
Not yet?
Yes. Fine unta, sir. Stop sharing.
Yeah. Actually, I stopped here. It's fine.
Yeah, sir.
Okay.
So thank you very much, sir. So Professor Sudarshan sir has given very good insight on a unique topic, underwater repair. So which is generally not found and not focused more, especially in the civil engineering core subjects. So he has touched upon the different diving technologies that are available for condition assessment and repair, and categorization of repair zones, and then different causes of deterioration, and the evaluation and investigation procedures that are available. Then the non-destructive testing for underwater repair and assessment, then sampling and destructive testing, so like core sampling, other methods of sampling. Then preparation for repair, so you need to prepare the surfaces for repair. Then methods and materials that are to be chosen for repair purpose. Then you need to be very vigilant in which method you need to use and what material you need to select. Then once you have done the repair, how to inspect that repair zones, that is very important. He has given very good insight on that. Then and ultimately the documentation, so whatever you have done, you need to document it for further repair or any distress that comes into picture, so to address that. Then he touched upon the latest technologies that are available and that are coming up. So in the form of precast elements and all, without having much trouble, we can do the repair underwater. So I profusely thank Dr. H. Sudarshan Rao Garu for his valuable lecture, so which is unique. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Professor.
So now I just I have few questions from the participants. I just read out one by one so that you can answer, sir.
Yeah.
So what if both sulfate and chlorides present in concrete? What can we do?
Sulfates and concretes, if they are present in the concrete, then definitely they are going to cause a lot of damage. This is very much known. But as far as possible, sulfates and chlorides we are avoiding in the concrete, because when you prepare the concrete, you are testing the water and you are testing the aggregates. So as far as possible, we are going to avoid the presence of sulfates and concretes in the concrete. But what happens is the sulfates or chlorides that are present in water, they pose threat to underwater concrete structures. So generally, when we are constructing an underwater structure, we take all the necessary precautions to see that we know that they are going to be exposed to chlorides and sulfates. So we take all the necessary precautions, like using proper admixtures, we're using proper admixtures and proper compacting of concrete. All this special care we take when we construct underwater structure, because there we are knowing that the structure is exposed to these chlorides and sulfates. See that as far as possible, the porosity of the concrete is very low, or try to avoid any voids in the concrete. So use good compactors and good admixtures to see that the porosity of the concrete is very low, so that the sulfates or chlorides present in the seawater, they enter the structure. Once they enter the structure, they cause damage to the reinforcement inside. So it is always better to take prevention rather than going to cure. So that's what they take maximum precaution when it comes to underwater structures.
Sir, next question. So how can we identify scaling of salt?
Yeah, scaling of salt is most of the times is visible, when particularly if you go to underwater structures. The scaling of salt scaling is mostly visible. So a diver, whoever goes into the underwater, he takes the videographs or sometimes the photographs of the scaling. So it is distinctly visible. Salt scaling is distinctly visible with a slightish white blackish color coating on the structure. So with the videograph that is sent to the surface, the structural engineer can easily identify that it is a salt scaling.
So what is repair technology for sump tank leakage?
Sump tank leakage. Oh, as Professor Kalgal has discussed a lot about the structure leakage in the dampness, some above surface structures. Though it's not connected to my today's topic, sump leakage. See, there are many technologies are available nowadays. You get a lot of repair materials available in the market from different companies, and even Professor Kalgal's company Ultratech is selling a type of material that is that can be used to avoid the dampness coming in sumps or water tanks. So nowadays, a lot of chemicals and additives are available. There is no issue for sump repair today.
Yes, next question. So what is the setting time of injection epoxy?
The injection epoxy is available with different setting times. It's not a unique type of setting time. So depending upon what type of epoxy you are using and what type of repair you are taking. So above surface, you can have slightly epoxies which are slightly having higher setting times. Whereas underwater, when you are using, the epoxy setting time will be used will be very less, so that the epoxy itself will not flow away because of the flowing water, particularly if you are doing in a river surface. And also the currents that are there underwater, they can also make the whatever epoxy is ejected, that will just come out of the structure again. So as far as possible, when you are going underwater, we are using epoxies which have got very quick setting epoxies in less than few minutes.
Yes, sir. So what are the chemical properties that are required for epoxy that are used for underwater repair?
As I said, the chemical properties required is very early setting, And then the second property that is required is flowability into the fill. Whatever gap is there, the epoxy should be able to flow. And third step is quick hardening. Epoxy should harden very quickly. And the fourth step is its strength and stiffness. Epoxies should have strengths which are very high than the concrete itself. So once you fill up the flaw, it should have restored the capacity of the original capacity of the structure. So these are the very important properties of a epoxy resin which is used underwater.
Sir, how to address this underwater FRP wrapping?
Yeah, FRP wrapping is another specialized technique, fiber reinforced plastic wrappings, and mostly people use carbon reinforcement wrappings underwater. So whether you are using carbon reinforcement or other wrapping, again you have to properly plan a formwork there, and then yeah, probably two, three divers have to go inside and execute the wrapping around the pier. But nowadays, what we observe is more than wrapping, we have pier and put this splicing equipment around the pier, which is damaged.
Sir, is self-compaction concrete is preferred for underwater repair?
So generally, the type of repairs they are taken in underwater, direct concrete is not generally used. Most times we use a pre-placed aggregate concrete. So aggregate is already placed and cement, sand, grout is then injected. It's not concrete which we generally used, but the cement, sand, grout should be flowable. The cement, sand, grout should be self-flowable. It is self-compactable. The directly SCC concrete, very rarely we see they use underwater.
Yes, sir. Another question. So, how to weld gas pipeline in underwater situation?
Yeah, I have shown some photographs for this actually gas welding. So here there are two possibilities actually. A remote operated vehicle can be sent inside, and the gas welding equipment with the robotic hands of the ROV, the remote operating vehicle, the welding takes place. Or for projects which are of a smaller size, not able to spend that much amount of money, a barge will be constructed slightly above the water surface, from where a welding equipment, a diver with a welding equipment will go underwater. There will be a shield he will be carrying, and below the keeping with the shield and holding the welding equipment, the diver try to do the welding process when it comes to underwater.
Yes. Is there any questions from Zoom participants? You can raise your hand. Yeah, if no questions, so I thank Professor Sudarshan Rao, sir, for his valuable insights even during question and answer session, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Ishwar Reddy. I once again management, principal, administrative officer, the chairman, everyone for taking this lead and this initiative to spread the knowledge during these tough times of Corona. I wish all the participants a safe stay at homes, and I request all of you to follow the guidelines given by the government of Andhra Pradesh and union government, and take care of yourself, your families, and be safe during these tough times. All the best and good luck.
Thank you, sir.